So can someone tell me about the nature of Jewish humor? It's self-deprecating, yeah. Anything? Is there anything to Jewish humor other than it being self-deprecating? Mock authority, yeah. Sarcastic, great. We're going to come back to that. Anything else?
Laughter is the best medicine.
Laughter is the best medicine. Yeah, laughter can take us through some pretty hard times. So we'll come back to that question. We start the Parshat Beshalach this week, and a few verses in, we get this passage on Exodus 14, verse 8. Could someone read for me from this full excerpt from 8 to 12? In either Hebrew or English.
I'll read in Hebrew. Okay. מהמקום? ויחזק אדוני את לב פרעה מלך מצרים, וירדוף אחרי בני ישראל, ובני ישראל יוצאים ביד רמה, וירדפו מצרים אחריהם, וישיגו אותם חונים על הים, כל סוס רכב פרעה ופרשיו וחילו על פי החירות לפני בעל צפון. ופרעה הקריב, ויישאו בני ישראל את עיניהם, והנה מצרים נוסע אחריהם, ויראו מאוד, ויצעקו בני ישראל אל אדוני. ויאמרו אל משה, המבלתי אין קברים במצרים, לקחתנו למות במדבר? מה זאת עשית לנו? להוציאנו ממצרים. הלא זה הדבר אשר דיברנו אליך במצרים לאמור, חדל ממנו, ונעבדה את מצרים, כי טוב לנו, עבוד את מצרים ממותנו במדבר.
תודה רבה. So this includes one of my favorite passages in all of Torah. And when I told this to a few friends, they said, that's your favorite passage? But I'll tell you, it's this section that I put in bold, and I'm not going to read it aloud in English because I want someone else to try doing that in several different tones. Imagine that you are an actor looking at this moment, at this script. How would you intone this line? Like you're from Brooklyn. Okay, how would it sound if you were from Brooklyn? Oh no, for want of grace of Egypt, like this, really? What? Yeah, you can imagine saying it. What is another way in which you might say this pasuk here? Angrily. What would it sound like if you said it angrily?
Was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness?
Yeah, like with like some real frustration there. That was great. Anything else? Yes, Joey. Can you pass the microphone down?
Was for want of graves in Egypt that he brought us to die in the wilderness?
Like what? What is this? Like what's going on here? Any other thoughts on how this might sound? Pass the mic. I heard an was that no, okay.
I was just trying to figure out, because Jewish humor is a huge gamut. It's if you look at all the comedians, the bulk of the comedians that we've produced, there's a whole gamut.
Yes. There's a whole range of Jewish humor.
And there's got books on Jewish humor. There's plenty of books on Jewish humor.
So yeah, and we're not going to talk exclusively about Jewish humor, but I want to tell you this moment, which is in a lot of ways a desperate one, right? The Jews have left Egypt. They've crossed the sea, and God stiffens Pharaoh's heart one more time, and they panic. because they see Pharaoh's chariots behind them, coming for them across the sea, and they think, we did all of that effort, we made it all of this way just to die in the desert. And they're really scared. But this line is not, it's not direct, right? It's not just, they're not saying, oh no, we're going to die, God help us. They say it in this way of like, what? For lack of graves in Egypt we came here? We couldn't have died there? You know, so it sounds different. It sounds different. And Robert Alter, the biblical scholar, notes that this is the very first thing we ever hear the people of Israel say in Torah. This is the very first time we hear their voice. Yes, Alan? We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, that's true.
Not 70 Shema will come later. So this is the first time we hear them say anything.
First time I heard you wrong in a year, nothing.
We all have our moments, right? So they're kvetching right off the bat. Exactly. History is made. They're being sarcastic and funny about it, right? Which is why I said we're going to come back to that. But they're also scared out of their minds, right? Yeah. You can't.
Not a want of praise in Egypt, right? So literally they're saying something that it's sort of mocking. The sarcasm is like or irony, I guess. You say the opposite of what you really mean, right? No, it's not really true that there was a lack of grace in Egypt.
Right. They know it's not really true there was a lack of grace in Egypt, but they're saying it anyway because they might be mocking in the face of fear. They might be making light of something because they can't face it. There's a lot of different.
No,
Yes.
okay, well, contrary to, there's a saying that hard work always pays off, but that's not always true, okay? They've worked so darn hard, and then when you've worked hard and you feel that it's all for nothing, that really hurts. That is crushing. That is disgusting, but it happens all the time. It just happens all the time, and that's disheartening when it happens, you know, and
It's very disheartening when it happens. This is a difficult moment for them. Why have we not heard their voice before? And if you're comfortable using the microphone, we'll try to pass that back and forth a little bit more.
I'm not
can you pass the mic
comfortable
down?
using a microphone.
They weren't involved. It was between God and Moses. You know, I mean, they were just there, you know, watching the plagues and happy they're not being hit with it. And time to go. But freedom's good. They were celebrating when they made it, and now they're scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there are a couple of, there's a couple of times when we kind of almost hear their voice. So, I mean, the first time is when they cry out to God, right? Like right before, when a Pharaoh dies, I think, and there's a new Pharaoh, and they cry out to God, and God remembers them, but they don't say any, there's no quote, and there's no sentence there. It's sort of this like mass cry. So I don't know, maybe you can sort of say that now that they're free-ish, they're starting to enunciate their thoughts more clearly, like more getting into what free people would do.
And what do they do? I'm just gonna stay on this one moment before we go to your comment, Marshall. What do they do with this first statement as free people? They kvetch. Also, if you turn to the next page, they ask to go back into slavery. Right? Their first statement as free people is to say, please don't make us free people.
Right.
So we're going to come back to that. Okay.
I'm not really sure. I am not really sure if they're kvetching, because if I look at the sentence beforehand, what does it say there? Let me pull it in front of me. Vayira'u ma'od. They were very, very frightened. And then what do they do? Vayitz'aku v'nei Yisrael el Adonai. Then they cried out to God. And then there's a pause, right? No answer, no answer. Okay, what are they going to do next? They're going to say, Vayamru el Moshe. Then they go to Moses. Hamibli in kavarim b'Mitzrayim. Aren't there any graves in Egypt? L'kachtanu lamut b'midbar. This is not a kvetching. This is a moment of absolute fear for them.
And
are they challenging God or are they challenging Moses?
Right. Are they challenging God or Moses' leadership is a good question, which brings us back to Jews can be very anti-authoritarian, right? There is a real question here of I'm struggling with the person or the God that has brought me to this place right now. Right. And the commentators really zoom in on a couple of things in this verse. One is that tza'akah to God, that shout to God. Rashi's comment on that pasuk is that was not a yell, it was a prayer. That in this moment of desperation, they turned to the only tool they had at their disposal, which was to pray just like their ancestors had prayed. Rosemary? Yeah.
I think we always go back to human nature. We forget what God did to them. Instead of saying what we did and we forgot us to die here, because why did you do all those things to us? All the miracles. I mean, we are never satisfied in life. Whatever we have, we want more and more. I think it's more a silly type of question. If they were really thinking, God wouldn't do all that for bringing them to there in the desert.
I'm going to repeat that for the folks on Zoom, that it's kind of a ridiculous question, because if they were really thinking about it, they would realize how all the blessings they've been given by being brought out of Egypt and being free at this point, that God has been holding them and saving them and redeeming them.
Even the column which was walking in front of them,
And
forgot that.
right, and the column leading them through the desert is and all they say in this first moment is like, why are we here in the first place? Yeah.
Kind of thinking about this, I mean, if like we know the sea's about to part, right? But they
Where's the
don't
microphone?
necessarily.
Oh, thank you.
We know the sea's about to part, but they don't necessarily know that, yeah, right? So they might just be confused. Like literally, they took us out of Egypt. All these 10 plagues. It looks like they're going to be saved, but now they're about to die. Like, what was the point of that? You know, they might really just be trying, like, wondering.
Right. Yeah. They're completely scared. They are. So there's this moment in which it seems like they're having a crisis of faith. Would you say that that's a fair assessment of this moment? Yeah. So they're.
On the other hand, Israelis, Jewish, are straightforward. Even back then, they were straightforward and talk and say whatever on their mind, like today.
Yeah. So
I don't think they ever had faith.
So Israelis are very straightforward. They'll say what's on their minds, which is what they're doing. That's an interesting theory. They didn't have faith in the first place.
They were freed by God, but there's no opportunity for them to demonstrate.
Oh, let's
faith.
have one speaker at a time, please. Say that again.
There's no point. At no point are they demonstrating faith other than leaving for a bad situation, which is just being smart.
Right. So that's a good segue, that they weren't demonstrating faith by leaving. On the next page, let's continue. I've included the verses that come immediately after that. And I've included them primarily to show you what Rashi's comment is on this moment. So could somebody read Rashi's comment in English?
This is on Exodus 14, chapter 14, verses 13 through 15. But Moses said to the people, "Have no fear. Stand by and witness the deliverance which God will work for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you will never see again. God will battle for you. You hold your peace." Then God said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward."
Thank you. And can you keep reading the Rashi comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. "Speak unto the children of Israel that they journey onwards. There is nothing for them to do but to journey on, for the sea will not stand in their way. Their ancestors' merits in their own, and the faith they placed in me so that they left Egypt will suffice to divide the sea for them." From Mechilta to Rabbi Yishmael.
Can someone summarize Rashi's comment in your own words? Yeah, they have no choice but to move forward. They're between a rock and a hard place. Yeah. Oh.
And this is the group of people that actually chose to go, because there's some people who chose to stay behind in Egypt. And therefore, the fact that these are the people here, I think that's contrary to what we said before, that these people lack faith. I think it's this particular group that did have faith. Because after all, they had seen the 10 makot that had taken place, they had experienced it. So if God can do all these things, then, and we're leaving, and Moses is saying we should leave Egypt now, I'm ready to leave Egypt and go forward.
These are the people who did have faith because they were the ones who left, who trusted God and walked out. So moving forward here with this, holding this question of what does it mean to have faith or question faith, and how do you show that? Do you show that in your words or with your feet? Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cardozo, who is a modern Orthodox rabbi in Israel, he makes this claim that the history of Jewish people is defined not by its faith or belief, but by its disbelief. That every moment that is important has this moment of a question or a crisis of some sort. Right. Rambam also, yes. But Rambam has a little bit of a different view of it. Do you want to say more? Okay, we'll get to Rambam. He is here. So,
I do want to add something to that because faith is one thing, but blind faith is something else. And yeah, I think that if there is that moment of disbelief, it shows blind faith isn't what the Jewish people want, but apparently it isn't.
right, so faith is one thing, but blind faith is something else. And blind faith is not what's being asked of us, even in this moment of walking out of Egypt.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I've also noticed that Pharaoh never has a name. He's just known as Pharaoh. Pharaoh. That right there makes a statement.
Yes, absolutely. So say more about what the role is of belief and faith in Judaism. How do you hold that in your life? It doesn't have to be for you. It's an open question.
Yeah, faith I have, belief is question.
Faith, yes. Belief, maybe. Yeah.
You know, it's like an insurance policy. But faith, definitely.
Hmm.
My son talked about it that way. It was like, might as well because
Might as well have faith.
there was this pop song, Do You Believe in Magic? Okay. Do you believe in magic? Well, I wouldn't count on magic. It's not that I discredit it, but I wouldn't count on it. Faith is a little bit the same way. I believe in it. I just don't count on it.
Yeah. Holding faith without relying on it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think for me personally in Judaism, my faith and my belief can be evolving and can change. And I think that we're not as literalist as some other faith communities. And we're, at least some parts of Judaism are able to read certain things as metaphor or to look at historical context and all of that. And I think that we can do that all within the context of also being truly committed to our faith and belief system. And we don't see it as a contrast. Whereas I think other faith traditions sometimes are more literalist and would see that as not being not with a directive.
Yes, she was saying that the tradition can hold metaphor very comfortably and is not a literalist tradition that demands our belief at face value of everything that we have written in Torah or in any part of Jewish tradition, right? That there's a flexibility, there's space there for reshaping or a different understanding of what we see. Talmud's a great example. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Now, of course, soon after, as Alan foreshadowed for us, we're going to have the 10 Commandments coming, and the very first thing that's asked of us in the 10 Commandments is possibly, you could interpret it as a statement of faith, is a demand that we have faith in one God and only one God, and that God is our God, right? And have you ever looked at Rashi's restatement in the Mishnah Torah of this first commandment of the 10 Commandments? So I have the beginning of it on the last page of the source sheet. And Rashi takes his entire introduction of his section Yesodei HaTorah, the foundations of Torah, to be a logical proof, because Rambam, I'm misspeaking, because Rambam was a rationalist and therefore wanted things to be provable. He did not want things to be taken on blind faith. And so Rambam took all of his, took Torah and everything that it says about God and said, okay, now let me take this and prove to you in a logical function how we can see that God exists. And what's asked of us is not that we have faith, but that we have knowledge, right? And so you see that in this part of his Mishnah Torah, the knowledge of this concept, specifically the first commandment of the 10 commandments, is a positive commandment. So he's saying the commandment that we are commanded there is not to have faith in some blind truth, but rather to have just to know that God exists, whether or not we believe or don't believe in God. How do you hold that? How do you reconcile the two parts of that? Yes.
I mean, I guess to me.
Is the microphone near there?
Oh yeah, sorry. I mean, I don't know if this is how Rambam interprets it, but the way I might interpret it is it's about sort of Jewish education. Like, I learned about the Exodus from Egypt. We discuss a million times throughout, like every day, every Pesach, everything. And so, like, I guess what it says is, like, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, right? So knowing that happened is an integral part of Jewish education. And whether or not we like deeply believe that or a million other things is maybe not the commandment, but having learned that fact, I guess, or that idea.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Alan?
When talking about faith, Bnei Yisrael have just experienced not one, not two, not three, but 10 separate instances of God's presence in doing things that are supernatural, according to the text. These are things that are outside of the norm and that one would not expect to be able to have. And yet, even after experiencing that connection and seeing God's worth right before their eyes and choosing to leave and not staying behind as others did, they still, when they have the midst of trouble, they start trembling. They say, where is God? What's going to happen? We've lost everything. And it's a sense of, well, he did it before, God did it before to help us, but now we're on our own. But not when so many of us say, well, how can I believe in God? What has God, done for me? How can I haven't seen God's work, God's handiwork necessarily. And one reason or another, but based on the text, for these particular Bnei Israel, it should not be an issue of their faith. And yet, because of their slave mentality and not used to experiencing God, they still have this experience. For me personally, in terms of faith and belief, it's been a very evolving process. Like for you too, Sandra, it is, growing up, I was much more of a Kaplan-esque kind of guy, powers for good in the universe, in the world. And now I take a much more personal approach, a la Heschel. But it evolves, it changes, and for all of us, and there are going to be times when we might have belief, we might have faith, and we might not.
One of the things,
I was just going to address the knowledge versus belief. And I could be completely off base, I probably am. But it seems to me that because in Judaism we do not have a clear draw within the lines that find image of what God is, that we can know God by his presence in this world, by the flowers and the birds and the love
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I don't know that that's what Rambam meant here. I know that Rambam also evolved in his writing over time.
Yes.
So, but I think that's one way of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sandra said that Judaism doesn't give us one specific, narrow, well-defined understanding of God, but we can know that God exists just from a sense of truth and a sense of resonance in what we see around us, in the love that we feel for each other, in the beauty that we see in the world, and that knowledge can ground us. And Rambam too developed in his writings, right? We have here this in the Mishnah Torah, but we also, the same Rambam who says, Ani ma'amin be'emuna shlema, right? Like, I believe in a full and complete faith that there is one God. And so what this moment in the Exodus holds for me, because of course, this is the moment in which we have the Erev Rav, right? The mixed multitude that left from Egypt. It's this incredibly human moment of crisis of faith, of calling out for faith, calling out for help. And maybe the Erev Rav was not the mixed multitudes of the people who left Egypt, but maybe each person who left Egypt had an Erev Rav within themselves. That all of these existed in each one of them, and all of these exist in each one of us too.